My parents moved up to Wroxham. My father had enlisted in the RAF and was based at the newly built Coltishall airbase. So Mother moved us up to Wroxham and we lived in a rented house on the riverfront called Bure Court. My mother and her friend who lived just up the road from where our house was, her name was Daphne Ward, and she had a little daughter called Dilly. And we used to play together in our garden. But this weekend, a group of American airmen from Rackheath would come to be relax at the weekend and hold a party in our house and in the grounds around the house. And they were all, I remember them all being very young and very cheerful and happy, and they brought with them lots of their rations, which of course was a great boost at the time because we were suffering from stringent rationing. On this occasion, this young man was with me in the garden and he said to me, "Can you swim?" And I said, "No." So he said, "It's time you learnt." And he picked me up and threw me into the water in front of the house. He dived in after me, but I had to learn to swim very quickly. And I've never forgotten that.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Adam boys, give her the gun. Down we dive, spouting a flame from under. Off with one hell of a roar. We live in fame or die.
So, if you can imagine, 2,900 personnel every day, every week on this site. Very historic. I don't think there's another base in England where we could now show you a similar setup and how we are restoring it and bringing it back to life. Not only as a woodland, but recognising and respecting and demonstrating the cultural heritage. It's a bit emotional really to say it, but between the few veterans that are still alive in their late 90s, there's one who's 104, but it's their grandchildren, their sons and their daughters, and the local population who have this tremendous bond. The bond is alive today as it was in 44, 45 or a little bit later after they left. You must remember that prior to them leaving, the 2nd Air Division as a division all clubbed together and they raised something in the order of £20,000 to leave a permanent memorial. And of course later that became the 2nd Air Division Memorial Library in Norwich, which has recently been revamped. So, and periodically, post-war, groups have come over, and as the veterans have folded their wings and gone skywards, their children have taken their place. So the association in the States and the bond between us is alive as ever, and it's a reason why we are remembering them here in what we're doing.
I'm a resident of the village. I heard the project was going on and I jumped straight in. As soon as I knew about it, I was down here on a Saturday morning. It's a chance to save the heritage of the US Air Force site, save it for the village, save it for the community, and people from outside the community can come and visit and generally experience I don't know, just see what the guys in the Second World War had to put up with, and what they went through for our freedom. In that corner, we found, I dug out an airman's boot that has been corroborated as being 40s US issue, so happy with that. And we also found several pieces of things like teapots and bits of kettles and things like that we believe came from the Colonel's house.
Right.
So potentially, when the Colonel's house was emptied, maybe they dumped it all in here, and it all got just buried in, because during the 90s, the earth embankment that we are now reinstating was all moved into the inside.
Right.
So this, when we started, was about this high in soil. So where we're stood now, we were underground. There were trees that diameter growing from the top of it. Trees just like we see around us, all growing out the top of this. This one, probably maybe another month, 6 weeks, something like that, of Saturdays. The rest of it is an ongoing project. There's another one of these shelters over that direction. There's a good one over there that's empty. There's a couple down that way that are just completely inundated in undergrowth. So, and the nice thing one of the US guys said on a Zoom meeting to me recently was, this being the communal area of the base, this is an area that all the servicemen would have used. People like the pilots were on the runways, but if you were a cook, you would never have seen the runways.
No.
You would have never have seen the hangars where the planes were kept and all, etc., etc. You would have never seen that going on. So to maintain that area, you would actually maintain an area that is a bit of a closed shop.
Yes.
This communal area, the mess, the showers, the blast shelters, the officers' mess was just down there, the sergeant's mess, all of this would have had 2,500 US Air Force men coming in here day in, day out, and the colonel was living just over there. So this was the true hub of the base. So by conserving this, preserving this, this is the centre, to my mind.
Well, our aim is just to restore it all, and so the public, the council have taken it over, or the parish council have taken it over, so the public can walk all through the woods and see the history of what the site was.
On the memorial bench dedicated to loving memory of David H. Tibblewhite, who was the author of the Rackheath Aggies. And it's with love from the family and David's son who's sitting here beside me. Where we're standing at the moment is where Colonel Shower's staff car would have dropped him off, and then he would have walked along this path, and as we come along here on your left hand side is the entrance to the Sergeant's shower block, and to our right is the officers' shower block, and they had individual cubicles. And again on the left is another path that takes you to the second shower block, which were for master sergeants and staff sergeants, and they had individual cubicles, whereas the ordinary sergeants went in groups in separate rooms. And now Colonel Shower and Lieutenant Colonel James Mahoney would have walked to this point and would have carried on to their domestic quarter, which currently is something of a ruin, but all the footpaths we have dug out and restored, and we now have a nice security protective fence around it, and one day we are somewhat determined to restore it. Now from this point we have made a woodland footpath around the White House. I may have said this before, but the senior 2 officers' quarter was called the White House, and we think the reason for that was the outside walls were rendered, and in bright sunlight they would have looked white, and if you look on the original 1944 photographs it does stand out, so we think that's why they called it the White House. So in order that you can appreciate it, we've got this woodland path that we've created that comes right round the building and takes you to the far end, and as we get there you will see it joins the footpath, the concrete footpath, which was their private path that took them from their domestic quarter to the officers' club, and of course back again. But one of the stories I'm told by the son of Lieutenant Colonel James Mahoney, his son Brian tells me, his father would walk that path, but he wouldn't walk back. He would be a party man, he would stay till the party was over, and he would be the last one to leave the mess, and probably did not walk a straight line coming back. Single brick wall, not particularly warm, with an asbestos roof, and that was very basic, but it was probably better than an instant hut. So as we come to the far end of the building, we will then join the original concrete path that would have taken them, both the senior officers, from their domestic quarter to the club. And here again is the pathway. So we're standing right at the end of the building, and as you see it's somewhat ruinous, but what we have done, we've cut all the base of the ivy, so the ivy has now died back, and we've done the same at the far end, but this end we've done first. So in due course, very carefully, the ivy will be removed so we can have a structural survey on the building, and then we will know how we are going to restore it. So as I say, from here, those 2 senior officers, undoubtedly after long missions over to Germany and back, they would have come back from those arduous missions somewhat exhausted, but they would shower. They would dress in Class A uniforms, and together they would walk this long path, which was their path, to the officers' club, and we will now do the same. And just think, no American since they went home has ever walked on this path. So we are quite privileged to do so. And hopefully next year, when they come back as a group or as individuals, there'll be the sons and the daughters and the grandchildren, and undoubtedly Brian Mahoney, the son of James Mahoney, will be with them, and he will walk in his father's footsteps, and that will be something of an occasion. And we're certainly going to be having a drink in the bar together, And there's also the story of an American lady who tells me that her father was on a trucking mission over to France, and they took cigarettes over there and they exchanged cigarettes for brandy, and her father brought the bottles of brandy back to the mess here, and she knows exactly where he stood with a champagne glass drinking the French brandy. So when she comes, she's going to provide the brandy and I'm going to provide the champagne glass.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come.